This decade bears witness to one of the greatest technological growths in human history. Technology isn't just a niche interest anymore. It is used by everyone for everything. Day in and day out, we take for granted that we all have access to the technology that we need to communicate with each other, to entertain ourselves, and to get our work done. We also rely on it to protect our personal information, such as our passwords, banking information, and online images. But our interactions with this technology are not as safe as many of us assume. With rapid growth comes shifting perspectives on security, both physically and technically. The technology that we rely on has also become a prime landscape for hackers to gain access to and exploit the data that is important to us. Hackers seek to get control of valuable information and use it to their own ends, whether it is for cyber warfare, media influence, bank fraud, or even identity theft. Hacking gives one the ability to access anything they set their mind to, no matter how big or small.
Hello? Wait, what? A free cruise? Yeah, I can answer some questions. Well, I was born on June 29th. My mother's maiden name is Harrington.
Memes.
My first car, that would be a 2007 Dodge Dakota. Great, so you're just gonna email me those tickets and I'll be on my next cruise. Watch where you're going!
Watch where you're going, asshole.
Aww.
The purpose of this attack will be for us to gain sensitive information from our target's computer. Both of our machines will be located within the same network. However, before we can launch any attack, we must find out what the victim's machine is by first scanning the network. For our attack VM, we will be using a machine that is running the Kali Linux distribution. The first step we're going to do in order to find the target's IP is launch the ZenMap application within the machine. Once ZenMap is open, we are going to perform a quick scan for the entire subnet we are currently connected to in order to locate all the machines within the network. After the scan is completed, we can now see some more information about the devices that were found within our network. This information includes the operating system being used by each device, as well as any open ports that are currently detected on the machine. If we want to find more valuable information for our attack, rather than use a quick scan, we will instead choose to run an intent scan across our subnet. However, when running an intent scan, it can take more time. With the intent scan now finished, we can examine all the information that was collected from all the devices on the network. We can see that one machine has a name that is very similar to the name of our victim, and we know its IP address as well, and that it's a Windows XP machine. With the IP address, we now know who we need to attack. Now that we have the IP address, we can continue forward and launch our first attack, where we will obtain and crack the password hashes on our victim's machine. We will need to remotely collect the SAM database from our victim, and in order to do that, we will be using the application known as Armitage. Once Armitage has launched, we will want to click on Hosts, Add Hosts, and enter the IP address of the computer that we found in our scan earlier. With the host found, we will now need to find the attacks that will be needed to be launched against the machine. This is a relatively quick process that will pull up all the tools that we will need for our attack later. After locating our machine, we'll simply right-click it, select SMB, and do the MS08067net API attack and select Launch. This will allow us to do the first attack onto the machine and allow us to get access to certain resources. Once the computer has turned red and with lightning around it, we have now initiated our first attack. To start an attack, we will simply right-click on the machine, select Meterpreter, and for this case, we will go to Access and dump the SAM database hash out to the command line at the bottom of the command window. With the hashes for all the user accounts now exposed, we can copy and paste them to a text document and save them for later, where we can use a hash cracking application in order to figure out the password for each user account. Within the current Meterpreter session that we have open, there are also other kinds of attacks we can launch, such as exploring the current file system on our victim's machine. We can look through and see all the different text documents or other sort of data that they have saved on there, and we can either upload or download our own choices onto their machine as we wish. In order to crack the hashes that we collected earlier, we are going to be using the tool known as offcrack available within Kali Linux. All we need to do with offcrack is simply load a text document that has all of our hashes saved within it, and then from there we'll just simply need to upload the rainbow tables we plan to use and start our password crack. After waiting some time, we can now see that all the passwords have been cracked, and from there we can save this document somewhere else so that we can view it later. We have now successfully cracked every account password on our victim's machine where they have no indication that the attack ever happened. This is because all we have done is simply grab the SAM database file from their machine and cracked it on our own local machine, so they have no idea that the crack even happened.
Ooh, I should check my balance at ATB.
ATB. Perfect.
The next attack we will be performing will be a man-in-the-middle attack, where our Kali Linux VM will art poison the network and intercept data between the Windows 7 client and the default gateway. Once our Kali Linux VM is intercepting their connection, it will simulate a website the client is trying to connect to, and it will then steal its credentials based on what the client has entered. The first thing we will do is we will launch Ettercap, is the software that we will be using for our man-in-the-middle attacks. Once the software has launched, we'd want to run a unified sniffing on the interface that we will be using to scan on the network. From there, we will need to stop the sniffing service so that we can configure some of the settings. The next thing we will do is we will scan for hosts on our network so we can see all the IPs that are available for us. Once the list has been returned, we're going to set our default gateway to target 1, and we're going to set the client machine that we will be intercepting to target 2. Next will be to activate the art poisoning in the man-in-the-middle tab at the top of the screen. All we have to do is click on art poisoning, and from there we just have to click sniff remote connections. Next, we will need to edit some of the Ettercap configuration files in order for our DNS spoofing to function properly. The file in which we want to edit will be nano etc/ettercap/eter.conf. Next, while we're in this file, we have to change the values for both the ECUID and the ECGID, both to the value of 0. Later on in the file, we'll find two values that we need to uncomment. That will be both of the values set for our IP table redirections. Once those have been edited, you can save the document and then close it. Next, we will need to edit the etc ettercap eder.dns file. This is the file that will store all the DNS records that will be stored on our Linux VM. So when our client needs to make requests to certain websites, it will look up this address first. What we're going to do is we are going to create records for atbonline.com that point to our own IP address, as we will be hosting a fake website to collect their credentials from the victim as they type them into the web browser. Once we are within the DNS configuration file, what we will need to do is to create two type A records within this DNS configuration. The first DNS entry will cover the domain name pointing to the Linux machine's IP address, and the second one will contain an asterisk, a period, and then the domain name to account for if the user types www in the address bar on their browser. To keep things consistent, we are also going to create a pointer record for www.atbonline.com that points to our address of the Linux VM that we are using. With the DNS configuration file now having the entries that we created, we now need to open up EtherCap, go to Plugins, Manage Plugins, and activate DNS spoofing. From there, we'll also have to select our current targets and make sure that they're still set to target 1 and target 2 just for consistency. To clone the ATB website, we will be using the Social Engineering Toolkit. Select Yes when Social Engineering Toolkit starts. We'll type in 1 for social engineering attacks, 2 for website attacks, and then 3 for credential harvesting attack methods, then the number 2 to clone a website. From there, all we have to do is type in the website that we would like to clone. In this case, we will be using www.atbonline.com. With our fake website now up, we can start our sniff in EtherCap, and we can now see the results of what's going to happen. The unified sniffing service starts, and from there it's going to start to locate all the DNS spoofing that it can create. For example, as you can see on screen, it will show that atbonline.com has been spoofed to 10.100.200.143, or the IP address of our Linux VM. With our ARP poison active and our DNS spoofing in place, we are now ready to fully perform our man-in-the-middle attack. However, just for safety reasons, we are going to test and make sure that our fake website will actually be collecting their credentials if we visit the website in question that we are spoofing. Connecting to the website via localhost, we'll insert some fake usernames and passwords in order to test and see if the social engineering toolkit will be capable of retrieving the data. After clicking login, if we look at the social engineering toolkit terminal, we can see that it pulled up the usernames of what we've entered, with the username of totally not my account and the password of not my password. Now that all of our tools are working, we can now begin our attack on the victim's machine. Due to some issues with our DNS spoofing, we were only able to reach the website by IP address, but when we do go to the IP address of our Linux server, it does show up the fake ATB Online website. From there, the client can enter in their username and password, and once they hit the login button at the bottom of the page, their information will be sent to the social engineering toolkit on our Linux VM. Looking back on our Linux machine, we can see that the username was captured as test user, and the password that was typed was also captured that had the value of test password. We have now successfully gained the user's credentials to their banking website. We do not want the victim to know that we are part of the man-in-the-middle attack on their machine. So, when after they are done filling in their credentials into our fake website and they hit login, we do not want their website to redirect to the fake one that we have created. So instead, with the man-in-the-middle attack, it will send them to the legitimate, real ATB Online website, so that way it has to communicate with the default gateway in order to leave the network and go to the website that it intended. We have now fully performed all the steps necessary to perform a man-in-the-middle attack in order to gain the website credentials of our victim's machine. Looking back at the attack, it is very hard to notice from the victim's end, because all that is happening in this attack is that we are just simply making them visit a website. We aren't sending anything to their computer at all, or doing any other kind of harmful attack. We're just getting them to visit a website that we've created that we capture the credentials on. When looking at the Wireshark capture, we can see that our client is trying to communicate with the DNS server of that network, but when it goes to actually create the connection, it connects to our Linux VM instead and goes through the HTTP transfer process. From there, all their information was ours, so we could collect any data that they provided through that TCP connection. In our man-in-the-middle attack, the only thing that did not turn out as well as we had hoped was the fact that we weren't able to reach the ATB Online website by name, but instead by IP. Though it did not work, it still fulfilled the same purpose as a man-in-the-middle attack, where our client would be connecting to the attacking VM and not the real destination. If anything, we believe that this was caused by some of the errors in our DNS spoofing.
Well, hey, Ryan.
Hey, Stefan.
Yeah, I didn't recognize you there with that ski mask on.
Yeah, it's been pretty cold out today, so I just thought, I'd wear it to, just, warm up my face.
Hey, man. I'm real sorry about yesterday. That's how I get when I look at dank memes.
Anyways, I gotta get going. Maybe I'll catch you around sometime.
Hey, I don't have you on social media. Are you on my face? You should come on my face sometime.
Maybe.
Hello?
Hi there, this is Stacy calling from ATP Bank. Is this a Stephen Soucy?
Stefan Susie.
Anyways, Stephen, I'm just calling in regards to some suspicious activity on your account. Sorry to ask you one question to verify your identity.
Sure.
Okay, that question is, what is your favorite movie?
Pretty Woman.
Perfect. Well, it seems here on your account that you've spent $2,500 on rich grain dark coffee beans. Does that sound familiar to you at all?
No.
Have you spent $2,500 on anything else recently?
No, tuition's not due for another month.
This seems unusual. So what we're gonna have to do is we're gonna have to launch a full investigation before we can issue you a refund of any kind. So I will be in contact with you and we'll keep you updated on this case, okay?
Okay, please do.
Okay, for sure. Have yourself a great day, Stephen.
Yeah, you too, Stacy.
Bye-bye.